Shalom. I pray this devil die and get every evil thing the Lord got to give. And listen, I know you look at us in the state we in right now. Come here, Shalom. Come here, Shalom. I know you look at us in the state we in right now. Black people on drugs, and we suffering and dying. And I know it seems like you can do whatever you want to this people. I know it seems like this, but the time for glorifying yourself is soon at an end.
Shalom, Israel. This is Priest and Officer I.S.U.P.K, of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. And today's topic we're going to talk about Negroes or not Africans. The Lord put a difference between the so-called Israelites and the so-called Hamites. That's the so-called Negroes and the so-called Africans. But before we get into this subject, I want to let you guys know you can check out Commander GEN.YAHANNA on the most controversial radio show ever on the planet. The Last of the Angry Black Men with Commander GEN.YAHANNA. You call in with your questions or your comments every Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. You call in, like I said, with your questions or your comments, and you'll get an answer from Commander GEN.YAHANNA. That's the Last of the Angry Black Men radio show. Okay, and every Tuesday through Friday, you can check out our free online classes. That's free online classes every Tuesday through Friday at 7 p.m. Okay? Now back to the subject at hand, we're going to talk about black people are not Africans. The so-called Negroes are not Africans. Okay, I got the Zondervan Bible Dictionary right here. I'm going to look up the word ham. Zondervan Bible Dictionary defines ham: the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 people to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Okay, right here the definition of Ham. It said not the Negroes, but it named all the African families, all the families of the African, the Hamites, not the Negroes specifically. Okay, so from here, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 42. We're going to start at verse 1. Genesis chapter 42 verse 1 says, now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. Verse 4, but Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. Verse 5, and the sons of Israel came to buy corn amongst those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Verse 6, and Joseph was the governor over the land, and it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food. Verse 8, and Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. They knew not him. Okay? Joseph's own brother could not recognize him from the Egyptians. So that's letting you know that we're two dark nations. The Egyptians was a dark people, and the so-called Negroes, the so-called Israelites, was a dark people. Okay, let's get some more of this. Yeah, Joseph's own brother could not recognize him. They thought he was an Egyptian. Okay, so from here we're going to go to Exodus chapter 2. And we're going to start at verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to his wife a daughter of Levi. So we got 2 Levites. Verse 2, and the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she, verse 3, and when she could not longer hide him, she took from him an ark of bulrushes and dabbed it with slime and with pinch and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river banks. Okay, this scripture right here is proving Moses was born an Israelite from the tribe of Levi, not a so-called white man. Moses was a brother from the tribe of Levi. Once again, today is the modern Haitians, the Haitians. Okay, so let's prove that Moses was a black man right here. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 4. And we're going to start at verse 6. Exodus chapter 4, verse 6. And the Lord said furthermore unto him, put now thy hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. Okay, right here it said, the Most High had Moses to put his hand into his bosom. And when he pulled it out, it was white as snow. Okay, if his hand was white already and he put it into his bosom and he pulled it out and it was white again, what kind of miracle would that be? So you knew Moses was from the tribe of Levi, which was a black man, put his dark hand into his bosom, pulled it out, it was white as snow, leprous as snow, proving that he was a black man. Okay? So from here we're going to go to Exodus chapter 11. And we're going to start at verse 7. But against any other children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord do put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. See, the Most High put a difference between the Israelites and the so-called Hamites, the so-called Negroes against the so-called Africans, a different people, two different people, totally different people. Okay? And from here, to show you again the difference between the Israelites and the Egyptians, we're going to go to the example in Acts chapter 21. The Greek guard mistaked the Apostle Paul for an Egyptian. Okay, so let's read that. You know, in history, the so-called white man teach that everybody was white. Teach that the Israelites are white. Teach that the Egyptians was white. Okay, but we're going to see what the scriptures say. That's Acts chapter 21, and we're going to start at verse 37. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Can thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days made an uproar and led us out into the wilderness for thousands of men that were murderers? See, they thought Paul was an Egyptian and couldn't speak Greek. It's showing you that we're two dark nations, but we're not the same people. Okay? And for me, I want to read a page from the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. That's page 84. Okay? And it says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, Generals Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrage and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were filled with black Jew slaves. Okay, that's letting you know that us black people, us so-called Negroes, the Israelites, we was living in Jerusalem. And we ran and hid into Africa amongst another dark nation of people, dark-skinned people. Okay, but the Africans found us and rounded us up and sold us into the hand of the Grecians. But that's another subject and chapter. You can read that in Joel. Okay, But the Lord do put a difference between the so-called Africans and the so-called Israelites. And with that, I want to say Shalom, Israel, that's talking to the so-called Negroes, the so-called Hispanics, and the so-called Native Indians. And remember to pay your tithes. I.S.U.P.K, home of the truth. Shalom.
When nowadays I work hard on the job till I come cross y'all. Still like I'm a criminal. Crime and get caught, it could be your first charge. Like, man, you ain't getting the minimum. It go dip, squat, 5 mile run, push, pull, sit on. Goddamn, get strong. Looking at my baby, trying to keep them doing wrong. It's too long before they grow. I can't leave them on their own. They killed Day like he had a 30-day case. The news covering up the story for what they say. It took me back to the time we lost Otis. Pretending these crackers, they gon' tell you something bogus. And I'm thinking like, damn, what you tell the kids? We tried to put up a fight, but did we fail the kids? Cause they really got us looking like no damn good. And why success got to cost my manhood? Hey,